So, Esther Dyson, we're here at the eG8 forum. Why did it matter?
It doesn't matter because the G8 is immediately going to listen to the recommendations, or honestly that the recommendations are going to be that amazing, or even perhaps what I would prefer. What matters is you have a lot of people being exposed to one another and a lot of government people being exposed to people they don't normally listen to. And that's, as usual, it's not what happens up on stage or what happens, on the video. It's what happens in the tweets and the personal interactions and the dinner afterwards and in the back call of the meeting. And that was positive. It wasn't, the world doesn't change overnight, mostly. It changes, even when you have a revolution, what makes the revolution work is the changes that have already started happening in people's minds. And that's what's going on here.
I've seen a lot of concern in the civil society community about the recommendations that are overarching and the feeling that there's a lack of control or ability to really contribute to them. Do you feel like that's justified?
It is sort of justified. Some of them were pre-canned. I actually sat down with my guy after doing my panel and we went over and changed them. I don't think that happened with all the recommendations. But, again, the community's aroused. It's going to make its voice heard around this. And, so take the Barlow thing. So the session that Barlow was on IP, it was more like a tennis match. People were cheering on either side when a point was scored, but nobody was listening to the other side. So, whereas Larry Lessig actually tried to engage in the dialogue, but they cannot go with their recommendations and say there was unanimous support for the IP recommendations, and that's the important thing. It is on the record that people cheered Barlow. It is on the record that people cheered Larry Lessig, and that matters.
Okay, so there were a substantial contingent of technologists, people who are from the internet, so to speak, who've shown up here and have spoken up.
And you don't need to be from the internet to believe in liberty and free speech.
Of course not. No, I was more taking it from the perspective of people who have been there for a long time and see it as a powerful force.
Incumbents.
Right, who are not speaking from the position as an executive in one of the large institutions, who are, by and large, many of the people we've seen on stage. And it's interesting to hear about the parts that are happening off stage as well. Can you share a bit more about what you might have learned there?
Just, again, people, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I'm from the U.S., so I've heard a lot of this already. But new people are hearing it. New people are hearing the arguments. New people are making the arguments. People from countries where it's understood that an important government official should not be paraded in the streets if he commits a crime. Suddenly the world is changing. People in government are not special, and they should be as transparent as everybody else. People deserve privacy. Officials, governments, institutions, they all should be transparent. And that's new thinking, and it was being heard.
President Sarkozy actually mentioned some of the power that digital transparency brings. It changes the way that you can govern. So that was clearly articulated from the highest level during his speech. There are other parts that give people pause, but that's a recognition that this is important.
That it matters. Not always welcome, but happening.
You have spoken a great deal about the power of technology to create transparency, to empower people. What are some of the most important examples of that we're seeing talked about here or in general?
Well, talked about here, some of the best examples are clearly originally what happened in Central and Eastern Europe, and there was more CNN and the spread of knowledge about what happened in the rest of the world, and that those economies weren't working, that other people were free to criticize their governments. Now it's Twitter and Facebook, and people, it's very hard to be a dissident alone. When you know there are other people who think like you, when you can form a group, when you can trade information, that matters hugely. But then the next step for building society is building good habits. It's not simply the desire for freedom. Just as being an entrepreneur, it's not simply wanting to do a startup, it's executing and building a real company.
That's reflected, I think, in some of the verbiage people have used. I know that Jared Cohen and Eric Schmidt have talked about connection technologies, and it's not necessarily just about connecting to the internet, it's connecting to one another through it.
Right. I have to tell you something Mark Zuckerberg said some years ago that maybe he'll say again today. He said, the other guys think that communication is a way to get information. We think information is a way to foster communication.
Well, I'm probably going to miss it because I also have to navigate this taxi strike, and I gather you are as well.
You want to go to the airport together?
I might just have to consider that, actually, because I do want to get home when I need to. The last question, and this is something that's important because I think of your place in the startup world. How are startups helping to change the world in this space in open data and transparency?
They're providing tools to make the data meaningful. They're providing tools for people to share the information. They're providing the communication tools, again, that allow everything from WikiLeaks to people communicating with reporters, tools like your phone connected to the internet so that you can record interviews not just with me but with all the other people you talk to, upload them, people can share them, people can comment on them, and that's all technology.
Yeah, changing the way we communicate with one another in the world.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Esther Dyson.
Thank you.